Hi, I'm Jasmine Clark,
I'm Amanda Weinstein.
and you're listening to the Suburban Women Problem. Today, we are so excited to welcome Karine Jean-Pierre to the podcast. She's the current White House press secretary, and she's the first Black and first openly LGBTQ person in that position. Madam Secretary, thank you so much for joining us.
Oh, thank you both for having me on today. I'm excited for this conversation, this opportunity, and get to know you both a little better too, as well. So,
Oh, yeah.
yay, we're
We're
gonna do
excited too.
this.
Like, very excited. All right. So, the Biden administration has done so much for Americans in the past 3 years, but not many people seem to know about it or talk about it. What are some wins that our listeners can share with their friends and their neighbors?
Oh, I love this question because it's so important. And again, appreciate this opportunity to talk to all of your audiences and listeners on this important issue. Look, the president came into this role, understanding what the country was going through, the economy, COVID. There were all these crises, climate change, and he got to work. He got to work and turned the economy around. It was in a tailspin when he walked in. And now what we're seeing is 14 million, more than 14 million jobs created under this administration, for example. We're seeing unemployment under 4%. For example. And not only that, oh, and one more thing too, which is really important, wages are going up, but also inflation is down by 2% in the past 6 months. And that's because of the policies he's put forward. That's because of these really important legislations that he helped create or worked with Congress on that is now law, obviously, whether it's the bipartisan infrastructure legislation, whether it's the Inflation Reduction Act, whether it's the Chips and Science Act. We're talking about bringing manufacturing jobs back home. We're talking about actually investing in communities so that we're building roads, so that there's broadband for folks in rural America, suburban America, urban America, so that all kids and families can be able to truly have that broadband and the internet at a cost that's affordable to them. And one of the things I'd love to talk about is the Inflation Reduction Act. That is so important. It's important because with the provisions in there, if you think about healthcare and lowering costs for healthcare, that's what the Inflation Reduction Act. It is the biggest investment in dealing with climate change. So energy costs are also coming down. And when you think about Medicare and drug prices, we've been saying for years, pardon me, for years, how we need to beat big pharma. We really need to make sure that we do that in a way that Medicare can be able to negotiate. The president was able to do that. So now drug prices are going to start going down once they start negotiating and figuring out the best drugs to do that with, to start off with. And insulin is capped at 35 bucks for seniors. Can you imagine? There's seniors out there who are paying 200, 300, $400 a month on insulin. Now they're capped at 35 bucks. So those are just a few. I'm just rambling off on a few things that the president has been able to accomplish this past 3 years.
Wow, there are so many good things that he has done for real families, but as we know, good news doesn't always sell. So it's important to talk about that. And I know Jasmine always talks about highlighting the wins, and
Yeah,
we need to highlight the little wins along the way. Uh,
exactly.
so, one thing that has been increasingly uniting women since the fall of Roe uh, has been reproductive rights.
Mhm.
And what we can do about it. So, what has the administration been doing to protect abortion access and reproductive freedom?
So, and another wonderful question, because it's such a that question obviously lays out a very scary moment for women across the country. If you think about it, back in June of 2022, the Supreme Court, the highest court of our land, made a decision to take away, overturn Roe, which was the law of the land for almost 50 years. And it has caused havoc to women across the country. We have heard horroring stories about what women have gone through because this right to for a woman to make a incredibly difficult decision about her life that she should be making with her family and that she should be making with her doctor has now been turned over, now no longer exist. And it is devastating. So you have seen the president speak to this. You have seen the vice president. She has been touring across the country to highlight, really going to the belly of the beast. She started off her tour going to Wisconsin, which was dealing with a restrictive ban on abortion. And she has been really on fire speaking about this and making sure that we highlight exactly what's going on. And what we have seen over the course of almost 2 years now is that we have seen women in red states, in blue states, actually standing up and speaking out and beating back a lot of these ballot initiatives that have been out there and fighting for their rights, talking, really fighting for their freedoms. And if you look back to 2022 elections, the midterm elections, one of the things that Americans really wanted to see and wanted this president to continue to do is to fight for freedom. It's to fight for our democracy. And that's what this president is doing. So on the day that the Supreme Court overturned Roe because of the Dobbs decision, he put out a couple of executive actions to make sure that we do everything that we can to protect women. So the Department of Justice started to take action and really help women who were, for example, having to go from one state to another state because their state that they were in didn't offer that reproductive health care that they truly needed and had to go to another state. And sometimes that could be a legal issue. Women could go to jail for doing that. So DOJ is now fighting that and trying to protect those women and also protecting doctors who are doing their duty as a doctor to provide that health care. So we have taken some actions, obviously, through the federal government, but it's limited. It's truly limited. What we need to do, what needs to happen, is that Congress needs to act. They need to put forth legislation that reinstates, that makes Roe the law of the land. And that is what we've been fighting for.
Absolutely. That is so, so important. And I really hope that we are successful in those endeavors. I've been really frustrated because Republicans have really been trying to position themselves as the quote party of families and education, but their track record speaks the exact opposite of that when they're the ones that are pushing policies that do things like ban books and cuts affordable school lunches. And so, they're saying one thing, they're doing another. How do we counter this quote pro family narrative that they're trying to sell people?
It's such a good question. And I forgot to say, even in my reproductive health care answer, Republicans, they are the ones who are asking for a national ban, who are saying who've introduced legislation for a national ban. They're the ones who have introduced these restrictive abortion bills across the country. They're the ones, and it's actually affecting 27 million people. So I wanted to make sure that I actually called that out because people should know what is happening with in Congress and with extreme elected officials just across the country. And it's important to know that. To your question of banning books, it's devastating. It's devastating to hear. It is devastating to see happening across the country. Look, this is a great country. America is a great country. My parents came here for a reason as immigrants because they wanted that American dream and they wanted a better life for themselves. But we also have history here that is incredibly painful. And to not talk about wanting to talk about slavery or the Jim Crow or civil rights movement, it is not who we are supposed to be. We are supposed to learn about all parts of our history. And this is what Republicans are trying to do. And so you have a president and a vice president who've called that out. Obviously, you have the Secretary of Education who continue to call that out and offering whatever they can to services they can to local schools to help them in any way that we can. And it is devastating to see. And so, again, we're going to call that out. As far as the lunches, look, I have my own personal story. When I was very young, when I was a kid, my parents made a move from Queens to Long Island. For those of you who Nassau County, for those of you who are from New York and understand know what I'm talking about. But the point that I'm trying to make here is that during that time, during the summer, my parents were financially tight. And so one of the things that myself and my siblings had to do is that we needed to have these summer lunches. that was being offered for free for kids like me who truly needed it. And it was a way to get some, one meal that you knew that was going to be a nourishment, right? That you knew you were going to get fed that day. And so it is important. Those summer lunches are incredibly important. And for, Republicans in Congress to not wanting to continue to fund that or to cut that, or in states, Republicans in states wanting to cut that, it affects real people, real young people who sometimes that's the only meal that they're going to get that day. And how are you supporting families if you're doing that? How are you supporting families?
Oh, I mean, the investments we make, especially in children, have the biggest long run impact. I
Yeah.
mean, I have said on this podcast many times, stingy pays twice. And when we don't make those investments early, we will and are paying for it right now. And it is important that we make those investments so that every person in America can achieve to their highest capability and wishes and the American dream that you mentioned. So you
Yeah.
also mentioned that, like many Americans, you're an immigrant.
Yeah.
How has that shaped your values and your career?
Wow, it's such another great question. Look, I started in one of my answers to both of you. I talked about how this country, America's a great country, and is a place to go after your dreams. And look, my mom was a home healthcare aide. My dad is a New York City taxi cab driver. They both still live check to check. While they are incredibly proud and happy to be here, they're still trying to survive, right? They're trying to make it. Their American dream is me being in this job, and being able to provide what they were able to provide for me, to be in this White House here working for the Biden Harris administration. It is a dream for them. But yes, it is still very hard out there. That's what the president understands. That's why he's made sure that when people are sitting around their kitchen table and they're trying to make those difficult decisions, whether it's medical costs, right? Whether it's trying to figure out how are you going to pay for your child care. All these issues matter to people. And so these are the things that we're working day in, day out. One of the things that I really want to speak to this because this is really important. The first piece of legislation that he signed was the American Rescue Plan. Only Democrats voted for it. And what was so important about that particular legislation is that it allowed the country to get back on its feet again, to schools to be open, right? All these important programs that young people need so that they were getting that, to make sure that was a COVID strategy and getting vaccine that was comprehensive, right? Now we're seeing small businesses being started, 16 million applications being started. There was one more thing that was really important. It was called the child tax credit, and it actually cut poverty by 50%. And it is something that we hope that continues in Congress, and they have been introducing legislation to try to get that moving again. But these are the things that families need. These are the things that my family needed growing up, And so, look, uh, we want to make sure that no community gets left behind. That's what the president wants to make sure. We have to build an economy that works for everyone, from the bottom up, middle out. We can't do this trickle down. It doesn't work. And one of the things that we've seen from many communities, they've been left behind. And I saw that in my community growing up. We've been left behind. And what I am so proud of being in this administration is communities like mine are not left behind. They are part of the conversation, and they are part of what we want to make sure that gets done for those communities that get forgotten. They get forgotten.
I love that you mentioned that, because that was one of the things that has always really stood out to me about this administration, is the fact that, regular everyday people have been built into y'all's agenda. And that's very refreshing,
Yeah.
because normally it's like, look, if you just give rich people all the money, they will fix all the problems. And I'm like, yeah, but that hasn't been working. And so I like that this
No.
Well,
administration is like, you know what, let's go back to the drawing board and actually
Yeah.
include the people who are actually driving the economy every day with their
Yep.
actual money, instead of hoarding it. And let's just see,
Yep.
let's see what happens when we, make them the central focus of our plans, our agendas, and our
Mhm.
administration. So I love that. um
It's 1,000%, 1,000%. That's exactly what the president believed. Not trickle
Yes,
down, building an economy from the bottom
I
up,
love
middle out.
that. So,
Yes.
suburban women are a key voting group. And um,
Yes. That's
interestingly, while we are a key voting group, politicians and pundits still stereotype us as all one thing. So they still, when
mm.
they say the word suburban women or suburban woman, there is a very distinct picture that they see. And guess what? Don't look like me. So why do you think that is?
This is the speaks to the diversity of this country, the diversity of our communities, and it is important to speak about it in a wholesome way, right? When you think about rural America, you think about suburban America. It is diverse. It is truly diverse, and so it's unfortunate that people don't see that. I can tell you, we see that in the way that we move forward with our policies and the way the president wants directs his team to move forward with our policies. But it is important to speak to all communities here. It is important to hear from all communities here, because while we're all part of a diverse community. Everyone has their different experiences. Some of them are shared, but some of us have our own different experiences. And so we want to make sure that all communities are seen. We hear from them, and so that is how this administration has moved forward. That is how I think you see that in the actions that we have taken. And so we see things very differently. We see things absolutely very differently.
Oh, I love that you talked about the diversity in the suburbs and the rural areas, that the stereotypes don't
Yeah.
often fit because every place is more diverse than we think about it.
Yeah,
Uh,
exactly.
and
Shared
a lot of people make it out
experiences,
to
but
be.
diverse. Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah.
And yeah, I love that. And when you talk about places being, left behind and people feeling left behind, you can find people and places all across America that feel left behind, that the policies in the past haven't worked for them, and that we're seeing new policies that are starting to work with them, including the American Rescue Plan that you mentioned, which I know Claudia Salmon is an economist who has said this has
Mm.
been resoundingly the best way we have ever dealt with a
Yep.
recession.
Yep. And
So,
yep. Oh,
oh,
sorry. Go
sorry,
ahead.
go
No,
ahead.
no, no, no,
No,
no.
go
I
ahead.
was going to say someone said this before we were going back and forth on this. Is that one of the things about the American Rescue Plan? It provided Americans funding to put in their pockets, right? The president made
Yes.
sure that checks were cut for people to put in their pockets, families who truly needed it, and they used it in order to pay for that child care, right, to put food on the table. And so that was what was so important for the American people. It was indeed building the economy from the bottom up, middle out.
Mhm.
It wasn't trickle down. I mean, it was really incredibly important. It actually helped people get back on their feet.
Absolutely. Because, I mean,
Yeah.
as Jasmine mentioned, like that's what keeps our economy going are the
Yeah.
people that are out in our economy. They're doing the work,
Yeah.
they're spending the money, not the
Yeah.
people
Yep.
who are hoarding the money. So,
That's right.
we'd love to ask you, you are breaking a lot of barriers and glass
Mm.
ceilings by being the White House secretary. It must be a lot of pressure to represent Black women, the queer community, and moms all at once. How has that journey been for you?
Well, thank you so much for that question. Look, it is a job of a lifetime. I say this all the time. It is a honor and a privilege to be here, to be this president's White House press secretary, to represent him. And when I step at the lectern, just recently, a little story here, my team and I were able to rename a new lectern. That We got a new lectern. That it was the first time there was a new lectern in the press briefing room since 2007. And so last year we got one, and we had the opportunity to name that lectern, and I named it the Dunnigan Payne Lectern, Alice Dunnigan, after Dunnigan and Ethel Payne, who were the two first Black women to be part of the White House press corps. Can you imagine that these two women worked incredibly hard? They were very diligent, hardworking, and they never saw anybody who looked like them that were part of the White House press corps, and they decided to be journalists, to be part of the White House press corps. And I tell that story is because I think they truly represent what this country is all about. Right? If you think about democracy, if you think about freedom of the press, anytime I step at that lectern, that's what we're talking about here, right? That press briefing gets televised across the country, but globally. The message that it sends, that how we move as a country, how democracy matters, how freedom of the press matters, how being, having a platform that you can speak to and being questioned about it, right? It is a great give and take. And so to be able to be that person for this president, for the Biden Harris administration at a critical moment like this moment, when I started this conversation, I talked about the crises that the president walked into, whether it's the economy, climate change, racial equity, right? To dealing with how do we really work on racial equity. That's what I get to do. That's what I get to do. And so it is an honor and a privilege. And yes, I represent multiple communities. And I just hope, my hope is that I make them proud every day.
Oh my gosh, that's beautiful, and thank you for that bit of history.
Yeah,
I did
isn't
not
that great?
know,
Yeah.
I did not know this, and
Mm-mm.
so, not only that bit of history, but thank you for paying homage to them because that is amazing. A lot of times, we don't hear about these things, and now there are people in positions of power that don't want us to hear about these things. So it's amazing that the lectern actually is named after
Yeah.
them so that people have to
Mhm.
know
Yes.
about done again in pain.
Yes.
So that's
That's
amazing.
right.
So this has been so amazing talking with you. But before we let you go,
Yes.
we love to ask you some fun rapid fire questions. So
Okay.
are you ready?
I'm ready. Let's do it.
All right. Do you have a favorite family recipe?
Oh, gosh, that's so good. I mean, I both my parents are from Haiti, so there are like these delicacies, Haitian food that I love. When you're from the Caribbean, there's always the rice and peas, and everybody makes it a little bit differently. So that's always my favorite. And I have actually this quirk that a lot of people don't know about. During the holidays, I love roasted chestnuts. Love it. It is my thing. That I grew up on it, and it is one of the most fun things that I now share with my daughter. We have roasted chestnuts, and there are different ways to make it. We make it the most easiest way, but I don't have a like a recipe that I can call through, but I definitely have different kind of delicacies and cultural food that I'm accustomed to that I grew up with.
Love that.
Mhm.
All right. So powerful women stole the show at the Grammys this month. If
Woo!
you could have one musician write a song about you, who would it be? Anybody, past or present?
Oh man, so this is hard. So my team would kill me if I didn't mention Taylor Swift. My team, I have members of my team that
My
Fair,
oldest daughter would
fair.
they're
as well.
Swifties, and I would get in really big trouble if I didn't mention Taylor Swift. And so there's that. And so but my all time favorite right now, obviously living, obviously is Beyonce. I mean, who would not want Beyonce, doing a song about you? And but I have to tell you, that night, the person that floored me and I loved to see and was fantastic and amazing was Tracy Chapman. It was
Oh,
just
Yes, I hope
yes,
that's what you say.
Tracy
yes.
Chapman.
From Cleveland, can I just
Yeah.
say a Cleveland shout out? Tracy
Ah,
Chapman and Luke Combs together. Like
it was
seeing them
amazing.
together was
You know,
amazing, and it brought together cultures and
yes,
places and
yes,
people so
yes,
well.
yes. You know what I loved about that moment when they were singing? You could tell how proud and in awe he was. He looked over and was like lip syncing the words as she was singing. Like you could tell he was just like so much lifting her up and was like so proud that she was on stage with
Hmm.
him. It was, you could tell there is from him, there was a deep love and respect for her. And I think we were all with him at that moment. We were like, yes, we feel what you're feeling right now. It is Tracy Chapman and she's fantastic. So that's how I would kind of wrap it up. I would get in trouble if I didn't mention Taylor Swift because I have Swifties on my team. I think I am an honorary Swiftie, so I got to say that. Obviously, Beyonce is one of the greatest, and love her. And yeah, she can write a song about me, and they both can write it. Maybe they can collaborate.
I was just gonna say that.
Uh,
That would
here,
be
here's
amazing.
an idea.
Oh,
They can
fire.
collaborate, write a song, and have Tracy Chapman sing it. How about that?
I'm in. I'm in. I am in. I hope they are
I would buy
listening
that
right
song.
now.
I've already tried to purchase it on
Yes.
iTunes and it's
Yeah,
not available
there we
yet.
go. All the three of them could sing it together. Oh my God, that'd be fantastic. There we go.
Love that. All right, Karine,
Okay.
where
All
can
right.
listeners go to find out
Okay.
more about the great work that the Biden administration has been doing?
Oh, that's such a great question. I would say go to whitehouse.gov. There's all the information, all the things that I just talked about. It's right there. They can even listen in or read about the briefing, the press briefing, if they care to. But I would tell them to go to whitehouse.gov.
Awesome. Well, Karine, thank you so much for joining us
Yeah.
today on the Suburban Women Problem.
Thank you both. Thanks for having me. All right. Bye.
Thank you. This is wonderful.